All right, so welcome back, everybody. So my name is Spencer Brewstead, and I love board games. I'm also a zoo volunteer and work with real animals. In fact, like baboons and giraffes, for instance. And so I really like board games that involve animals a lot. And so while I do play other board games, like space-themed board games, for instance, um, I usually prefer animal board games above all else. And so I like to share with everybody, uh, you know, my favorite board games every year. Um, I also like to make how to play videos for my friends and for just anybody who, wants to watch one of my videos. And if it helps them out, great. If it doesn't, there are other YouTubers out there that explain how to play board games, and there's no way I could ever play every single board game that comes out, or even afford every single board game that comes out, even if it's only animal-related board games. There's just no way. But I've gotten to play some board games this year, and a few, and that came out this year, and I some of them might be on this list. They've definitely fluctuated my list this year. A lot of my board games have fluctuated, so it'll be a little bit different based on like where certain games were. And if you watched my last year's video of my top 10 favorite board games, you might notice some that aren't even on the top 10 anymore, because they got pushed down. And you might remember some of them that were in the top 10 that aren't even in my top 20 now, and because they've been pushed down that far. I still like them, but I don't like them as much. So for this video, I'm going to share with you guys my top 20 favorite board games, because I feel all of these games are great, and I feel that my 11 through 20 board games deserve to be in my top 10, but there's just no space for them, because I've already got 10 other games that I think are amazing and belong in my top 10 as well. So let's get started, and I'm going to share with you guys my number 20. So here we go. So my number 20 is Dale of Merchants, the Collection. This is a deck building game. I've got I own 5 deck building games, and I've played a few others over the years. And this is my second favorite deck building game. Now, this deck building game isn't like some of the others. This one is a race. You really are racing, basically, to get stuff done. The object of this game is you want to build stalls, merchant stalls. And you need to build 8 of them. Okay, 8 of them. And you do that with the cards that you are buying. You do that with the cards that you start with and that you are buying, because you are building up your deck. So you only start with a few cards, and there's no way you could build out your stalls, except for maybe the first one, unless you bought more cards for your deck. So you're building it up, but you're also using your deck to build your merchant stalls. And once you use them to build a merchant stall, they're gone. You can't use them for their effects anymore. And that will make things more difficult for sure when you're building your deck up. So you're gaining actions with these cards that are really useful and awesome to play with, but you're also losing them to build your merchant stalls. So it's kind of a dilemma. I really like this card. It's giving me all these extra cards and let me do all these other things, and yet I need to build my next stall in my merchant stall, my next stack, if you will, in my merchant stall. So I have to use it now. But you're also trying to get, so you'll start with various merchant folks, okay? If you have the collection like I do, you have lots to choose from, so lots of replayability. And so you're going to get these merchants, okay? And start with a certain amount based on, you'll have a certain amount based on player count. And Then you'll need to use one to build a stall for sure. So you'll pick the one that you think isn't as useful as the others, basically, right? And then as you're building other stalls, after a certain point, the numbers become too hard. So you start with the first stall, and the second stall is easy because you just usually need one card for that one. Same thing with the third stall and the fourth stall. But once you start to when you get to the fifth, the sixth, the seventh, and the eighth stalls, you need matching cards. Each of the merchants is basically a different color, so you need matching colors or matching items that basically are being sold by one of the merchants, basically, right? You can't really, unless there's an ability that says otherwise, you can't you can't mix and match, if you will. So you're really trying to find certain cards that will go with other numbers to fill a stack, because if you need to build a stack of 6, you might use 2 cards that are 3s, but they have to be the same color. That means you have to have 2 3s that are the same color. And if you've got 4 merchants with 4 different colors, and the market hasn't been showing those numbers or in those colors, you might, I guess I need to get the 3s from the other colors then. But that takes time too. It's a race after all. You want to be the first one to build your 8th stall. So it's a big race. And so you might be thinking, oh, I'm way ahead here. I just need one more stall. I just need my 8th stall and I'll win the game. And everybody else is like 2 stalls behind. But then I'm not getting the cards I need to build my 8th stall because I just don't have the cards. Then I don't have the colors for the numbers that I need to build the last one. And the other players can catch up pretty easily. And one of them can win instead. So it's a race, and sometimes you just don't know who's going to win that race. So this one's a lot of fun. Delve Merchants, the collection. So there's Delve Merchants 1, 2, 3, and collection. They're all standalone, or you can combine them, and you can even fit them in this box, the collection box. So awesome, awesome game. Number 20, Delve Merchants. Okay. So my number 19 is a game that's been getting a lot of buzz this year. A lot of people have been playing it. I haven't played it as much as I'd like to, but I still really love this game a lot. And that is Terraforming Mars. Now this is a tableau building game. You're going to be playing cards to hopefully get out some resources like maybe plants or maybe you need heat to increase the heat, so you'll play cards that provide you heat, and then you'll use those resources to either raise the temperature on Mars because you're terraforming the planet, or you'll use the plants to plant some vegetation out, get some vegetation out, and then that vegetation, that forest that you plant out, well, that's going to provide some increase in oxygen, which is another thing you need to terraform the planet. And then you're going to want to build oceans as well. And so ocean tiles, you'll get those out. And you need to get all 3 of those in order to end the game. So it's not a co-op game by any means, because while you are working together to basically, terraform the planet, you're not working towards a common goal necessarily because you want to win the game, right? You want to get the most points. And so terraforming the planet is just one of the many ways you get points in this game. So, do you want to, be the one that gets the most prestige, who, planted out the most forests and raised that oxygen the most, but then another player, maybe they focused on heat the most, and they're getting victory points that way. Like I said, you don't even have to do too much in the way of terraforming Mars. The other players could, and you could be focusing on gathering, science and microbes and getting points playing various cards, that kind of thing, or in helping out a little bit here and there to get those extra points. There's a lot of different ways to play this game to win it, but the game won't be over until those 3 requirements are met. But that's Terraforming Mars, my 19th favorite game. And I got to play this with my group, my friends, at least once this year, so that was awesome. And then the rest of the time that I've played this game, it was on Steam or Board Game Arena. So I'd like to play this more often for sure, but that's why it's kind of bumped down to 19, because I just haven't really gotten to play it as much as I would like to with my friends. So that's 19. Okay. So my number 18 is a zoo building game. Now, it's not this zoo building game with the icons that most people are familiar with. This one is New York Zoo. A small little game, for sure, not as big as some of the others. Doesn't usually take as long either. This is a polyomino game, okay? So you're going to be placing out tiles to build your zoo, polyomino shapes. Lots of different Tetris-like shapes. More variety than most games, for sure. And while you're doing that, you also need to put animals into those tiles because those tiles are your enclosures. So you need to gather animals and you need to gather, well, enclosure tiles. And then as you're getting animals, eventually you'll have at least 2 animals of the same kind. You know, either 2 flamingos or 2 Arctic foxes or 2 meerkats, which for some reason didn't make the main box of the, for the picture, 2 penguins or 2 tree kangaroos. And so you're going to be getting those animals, and eventually you're going to have 2, like I said. And then you'll be able to eventually breed them as the breeding season, basically. As the elephant reaches the breeding season, which is basically the marker that you're using for the board. And so then that's going to help you and basically fill in those enclosures. Eventually, though, it'll fill up too much. And well, what happens when you have too many animals in an enclosure? There isn't enough room for them all anymore after that, right? And so now, guess what? It's time to get them out of that enclosure and get it all cleaned up and spruced up once again, so that hopefully you can maybe put them back in there later, so to speak. It's not, like I said, it's not super thematic in that sense, but the reason why you want to do it is it's going to get you these bigger tiles that you can really fill in your zoo with, because it's a race. This game's a race. You want to be the first one to finish your zoo to win, so this is another racing game, basically, because you want to be the first one to complete your zoo. And to do that, you're going to want a big, giant roller coaster to really fill in your zoo as fast as possible. There's only one of those tiles. So you would definitely want to be the first person to get an enclosure filled with animals, so that way you can get that tile. But that's not the only tiles you'll need. You're also going to need little food stalls and stuff like that, because when you're building your zoo, you most likely will have a few small little gaps that you couldn't fit the tiles in perfectly. And so there's going to be little gaps, and you need to fill those gaps in too. And the only way you're going to do that is getting food stalls. And the only way you're going to get the food stalls is if you fill in an enclosure to the brim with animals and empty it out, basically. But yes, that's why New York Zoo is my number 18, my 18th favorite game. It's a race, it's a zoo game, it's an animal game. I love it a lot. Number 18. Okay. So, my number 17 is a deck building game. It is basically the first deck building game that ever existed. And without it, we wouldn't have so many deck building games out there, for sure. And a lot of people like this game a lot. And then there's other people who think the other deck building games are better. But this game is still amazing. And that is Dominion. So Dominion is my number 17, okay? So this is my favorite expansion for Dominion, Dominion Menagerie. So deck building is a concept that hasn't always existed, because this was the first of its kind. I mean, there might have been some weird miscellaneous game that was supposedly a deck building game that came out right before this one. But this is the one that really took off and really inspired other designers to build other deck building games, like Dell of Merchants, for instance. And Clake, which a lot of people like, which doesn't quite make it to my top 20 list. So Dominion is a deck building game, but it's got a lot of expansions. So many, 16, 17 expansions now, I think. Whew, it's a lot of expansions. And each expansion has probably, except for maybe one, all the expansions have usually around 30 or more cards. Here's the thing, though. You're only playing with 10 of those kingdom cards. 10 of the 30 of each expansion, or if you're just playing the base game, still. And so that means a lot of replayability. In fact, as you get more expansions, you won't, at some point, you won't ever have played the exact same ratio of kingdom cards. I mean, you won't have played a different ratio every single time. You won't have played every single ratio possible to the point with all these expansions. And if you did, that'd be very strange, because that's a lot to keep track of what cards you've played with and which ones that haven't been played with together, especially as you're mixing and matching expansions, for sure. So Dominion is still pretty high on my list. It's still in my top 20. It's kind of soured a little bit over the years for various reasons, mostly because of my group. I've only got a couple of people in my group that like this game a lot, and while there's a few new ones to my group who haven't played this yet, so that might change as I introduce it to them, but the ones that do almost never join. I only see them maybe a couple of times a year, so that's why this game kind of has dropped over the years. It used to be in my top 10. It used to be my favorite game. So it's definitely dropped down some, but I still think it's an amazing game. I still think it's a game that belongs in my top 10. It just doesn't quite make it to number 10, obviously. At what level? What number was it again? Sorry. 17. 17. It was 17. So Dominion, deck building game, amazing game. Let's move on. All right, so my number 16 is a bird game. It's the bird game. It is Wingspan. Now, there's been a lot of expansions for this game that add more birds, and you know what? I love more birds, for sure. I'm still waiting on another expansion for this game, for sure, and because I want to see some birds from Africa, for sure. There's a lot of interesting species of birds there. Wingspan is a great game. It really is. You've got various, biomes and things to put your birds into, various environments like the wetlands and the forest, for instance. And so you're trying to put birds there, and you only have room for a certain amount. And while you're trying to place out birds, you're also trying to get various abilities that let you draw more cards and lay more eggs and get more food. And that's the thing. When you're trying to put these birds into your forests and in your wetlands, for instance, you're going to need food, which means you're going to need to gather food to feed the birds. And each bird is different, Each bird is very different, has a different dietary requirement, so to speak, in order to feed the bird, basically. So Wingspan's very popular, and even though it's very popular, I think it's an amazing game, even if it wasn't, because this is just so much fun. So many birds to choose from, so many abilities, so many ways to score points. The eggs, gathering eggs, that's fun. And over the years, I've gotten upgrades for the game to increase the enjoyment, if you will. I think it's an amazing game. It really is. And so that's why Wingspan is my number 16. Of course, maybe it'll go higher if they add another expansion at some point. It's been a couple of years since we last had an expansion to this game, for sure. So that's my number 16, Wingspan. Okay, so my number 15 is a deduction game. Not very many deduction games on my top 20. This is the only one, in fact. And that is The Search for Planet... No, sorry, just kidding. It's The Search for Lost Species. Of course, I'm going to choose the animal version than the space version, right? Because I love animal board games. Gotcha there. So, in this game, you're trying to look for a particular species of animal. And there's a lot to choose from before you set the game up. This is also an app-driven game, so you're going to need an app to play it. I think the app for this game is amazing, by the way. Really well done for this game. This is like the only app-inspired game I own, okay? So while you're looking for this particular species of animals, let's say it's a species of bat you're looking for instance. While you're trying to look for that bat, or that echidna, whichever one you're playing with, and there's like 5 to choose from before the game begins, you're also trying to find other animals, because the other animals provide logic rules as well, and they narrow down the location where this might be. So you need to rectify that. You need to find where your couscous is, all the couscouses. You need to figure that out. You need to find where all the toads are. You need to know where that python is. And you need to know where the lories are. Those 4 animals, you need to know where they are, so that way you can help track this animal down. And while you can get a lot of points if you're the player who finds the lost species first, you can get a lot of points that way. You can also get a lot of points just by being the first to find, ooh, there was a toad here, and I'm right, and that is a toad there, you know. You can get points for finding the other animals too, which is great. I think that's amazing. So it's not a race game to find the species. It's not a race game at all, because you're getting points for all the other animals you're finding, and the player who has the most points wins. Yeah, this is an amazing deduction game. Now, I've never played The Search for Planet X, which was the predecessor to this game, but maybe a friend of mine will get it someday, and then I'll finally try it. But until then, I think this is an amazing game. I don't need The Search for Planet X, because this one is awesome, as is. I love the theme. So that's my number 15, The Search for Lost Species. Okay, so my number 14 is a game from AEG, okay? And that is Ecos, The First Continent by John DeClaire. Now, this is an awesome game. So, one of the things I like about this game is you have a bag, and that bag has a bunch of stone tiles in it, or tokens in it. And you're going to be the harbinger. Everyone's going to get a chance to be the harbinger at some point, and you're going to draw those, stones from the bag. And those stones will have symbols on them. And you're going to have cards set in front of you. And your cards have various symbols on them. And when when a stone is drawn that matches one of the cards that you have that has a symbol on it, exactly the same, right? You have to put a cube on it. And when you have all of your symbols on a card covered with cubes, you get to call out Ecos, which is fine, but then you get to do what the card does. And oftentimes the card is going to have you basically build this continent, okay? So the continent starts out tiny, and so you're going to build it, make it bigger, okay? So we're not saying that Africa is the first continent, but in this game it is. And so all the animals live in Africa that you're going to be placing as well. So you're building the continent, and you'll get points that way. You can also put trees out and get points that way. You can also place out mountains and get points that way. But you're not necessarily getting points for placing those out. You're getting points based on certain things that the card tells you. And there's so many different cards that provide different ways of scoring points for what you're doing. Some say, hey, you get points for each different tree that's separated from other trees. So if there's a group of trees separated from another group of trees, you're going to score points that way instead. Other cards you'll play will say, hey, you get points for a lot of trees in the same group. So you want to build up a huge forest, and then every tree that makes up that forest gives you tons of points. So there's a lot of different ways to score points. And while you're doing that, you also want to place out animals, right? Some cards let you place out the gorilla, but you need a mountain in order to place out a gorilla too. So there's a lot of requirements for some of these animals. There's animals that are going to go in the water too. And so while you're placing out all these different animals, let's say you're placing out a rhino. Well, the rhino likes to be solitary, likes to be by itself. So you want to place it in a spot that's not next to another animal, and then the card tells you, hey, because it's alone, you're scoring points. So you're going to try to obviously put out that rhino in a spot that's going to score you points if that card says that way, right? And as you're playing out all these other animals, like antelope, for instance, well, some point, someone's going to have the lion. And you might not know this at first, that they have the lion, and that they're about to play that card that has the lion in front of them, and then they just need to get those symbols covered, right? So, it's coming. And then you get the lion out, and then that lion moves around the continent and starts eating all of the animals. Okay, so it might seem like, oh my gosh, I was placing those antelope. How could you? I was going to get a ton of points that way, but not really. Because while you're trying to get points for placing out those antelope, and you probably already did get tons of points for doing so, they're not yours, they're not anybody's, they're just there. And then somebody takes advantage of that, places out that lion eats all the antelope, very thematic for sure, and gets a lot of points based on the amount of antelope that lion just ate. There's a lot to do with this game, for sure. There's a lot of ways to play, a lot of ways to win, but here's the thing. If your opponent didn't place out all those antelope, then what's the point of playing the lion, right? Because now you're not going to get points for it, because nobody placed out any antelope. So you need to use your opponents to basically win the game in some cases. Or like I say, you can be the player that's working on these antelope, getting them out, or maybe you're the player who just wants to build up the continent and get tons of points, place out, the desert tiles and the water tiles, for instance, and get tons of points that way too, So there's a lot to do with this game for sure. It's super fun. It's an amazing game. Definitely one of my favorites from AEG. And so that is my number 14. Yes, this is my number 14, Ecos the First Continent. All right. So, my number 13 is a game from Red Raven Games. Red Raven Games. So, and that is a smaller game called Mega Land. Much easier on my wrist. Not as heavy. So, Ryan Lockett is the publisher and the designer for many of the Red Raven games, and Megaland is one of his that he's designed. And, there's other people that have helped him design this game too, obviously. It's not just him. It's a team effort. It's a family, for sure. A good family, for sure. So, Megaland is a push your luck game, okay? So, you're going to go into this dungeon, okay? Now, with many dungeon games, you're fighting monsters. This game, you're not fighting monsters whatsoever. There's no swords in your hand. You don't have some magical ability. You have nothing. You're just a guy going in, or a girl, going in to a dungeon and pushing your luck. Now, everybody is going to go into this dungeon together. And you each start with the same amount of hearts. And so the first zone you flip over might be a safe zone. And you're like, yes, nothing bad happened. And as you're going through these levels, you're going to be getting resources, okay? So you're going to be acquiring those resources as you go down through the dungeon. Eventually, though, you're going to flip over a zone that's going to have a monster on it, and you're going to receive damage based on how strong it is. And, some players might decide, what? I only have one heart left. Let's leave the dungeon and, go back to town, basically. But a player might stick around. You know what? I have one heart left, but there's still potentially 3 more safe zones that I could come across. So I'm going to push my luck, and I'm going to see what's next. So he's going to go down there, and what happens next? It's the red serpent, and he instantly dies. But at the same time, that's been known to happen. The other opposite has been known to happen, where the next zone that gets flipped over, it's a safe zone. He got another resource, and he stays again, and it's another safe zone. And then maybe he leaves, and he gets all this extra resources, and that puts him in a huge lead because he's pushed his luck. Now, this is a very short game, so while one player can get ahead, and there's no way the other players can catch up, it's a short game. So an hour at most, maybe. I've played this game where it only takes 30 minutes. So it's not very long. So you can play several of these in the same day, for sure. And like I said, you're going to use those resources to build your town, basically. The town that you're building is going to provide you coins, okay? Various buildings you're going to build, they're going to provide you coins, and those coins are victory points. When a player reaches 20 coins, that ends the game, and whoever has the most coins wins. But there's a good chance that somebody who got tons of resources was able to build a bunch of buildings and get a ton of extra coins and just get a huge lead. That's possible, for sure. But there's ways to increase your chances of survival in the dungeon that makes this game so much more enjoyable than just simply trying to get the most coins and winning. The fun of the game is surviving the red serpent without getting any damage. What I mean is, one of the buildings you can potentially build in this game is a gym. And that gem can give you jump tokens too, okay? Once you use them, they're gone. So when you have jump tokens, before you reveal the next level, you need to ask the players who have the jump tokens, are you going to jump this level, okay? And if they choose not, then that's fine. If they choose they are, then let's see what happens. Reveal the next zone. Oh, it's a safe zone. I just wasted that jump token for nothing. Oh. But hey, nothing bad happened at least, right? But then there are times when you reveal the card and it's a bunch of bats. Well, bats, you can't jump the bats because they're flying monsters. So now you receive the damage. You lost the jump token. Ouch. A double whammy. But what's really fun is when you use a jump token and the next level is revealed and it's that red serpent that does 3 hearts of damage. You just jumped it, avoided the damage. Everybody else didn't jump. They got hurt. They're leaving now. Some didn't even survive, so they're respawning outside of the dungeon with nothing, you know. And you get to continue with a full amount of hearts still and continuing getting more resources. And that's the fun of the game. Just going into the dungeon, pushing your luck, trying to see how long you can survive. And sometimes, even though everyone has left, we like to see what would have been next. And there have been many times when we all left, and the next zone, the next level is a safe zone. Oh, we could have stayed and got more stuff. But that's the fun of Megaland. And that's why Megaland is my number, 13. Okay? Megaland, 13. So, we're getting closer to my top 10. Here we go. All right, so now it's time for my number 12. Now, my number 12 is a heavy box. Very heavy, very big. I'm only going to hold it up for a few seconds, and that's it. And what is my number 12? Well, it is Unsettled, okay? It's a huge box, as you can see. Now, what is Unsettled? Well, it's grandiose for sure. It's a very big box. It's very grandiose. Awesome, amazing components. The best components I've ever seen in a game. Now, Unsettled is a co-op game. It's designed by Orange Nebula. It's the only game I have from them, with good reason. It's expensive, for sure, but worth every dollar, I tell you. Worth every dollar that I spent on it. This, like I said, is a co-op game where you basically you need to land on a planet, or maybe crash land, depending what the planet is. You need to land on a planet, and you're in a part of space that is unknown. No one's ever been to this part of space. You've ended up in this part of space because of a black hole or something. And there's lots of different planets you could potentially land on for tons of replayability. I've only played Winora. That's the only planet I've played. But I have 4 different planets in my collection. And there's like 10 or more now. I think there's like 12 now, maybe? There's a lot. So I picked my 4 favorites because I couldn't afford all of the planets right now anyway. Maybe when I've played those 4 planets each once, maybe we'll consider getting some more planets. But anyways, so you've landed on a planet. And you need supplies in order to basically continue your exploration of space. Maybe get home someday, right? So you need to explore this planet. Now this planet, you have no idea what's on it. It could be just about anything at all based on the planet that you're on. And it is very dangerous. It could be quite dangerous. Now, while you're trying to find various supplies and resources that you need to get back to your ship, you need to make sure everybody makes it back. So while it's an exploration game of sorts, it's also survival, and it's also sort of almost like a puzzle sort of too. There's a bit of a puzzle as you're trying to find various things. There's lots of abilities in this game that each player could potentially have that makes it very unique. What else is there to say? This is just an amazing game. I've only gotten to play this once, and like I said, it was Nora with my group, and once by myself, because while it's a co-op game, you can play co-op solo too, right? I have been tempted to play other planets solo, but I kind of want to experience them with my group. So it's on hold for now. That's probably why it's not on my top 10. When I first got it, it was in my top 10, but it's dropped down a bit because I've only gotten to play it once this year with my group. It's an amazing game. I don't want to spoil too much. Like I said, I don't want to talk about too much because it could spoil it for you, for sure. Because it's really an experience. This game is an experience. It's the experience that's fun. Finding various life forms, whatever they may be, exploring weird places on the planet, so many different places, so many weird, unusual places to traverse through. But you don't want to get distracted by that because you need to get back to the ship, and everybody needs to. And if one person does not make it back to the ship, you all lose. You all have to survive. Okay? You all have to survive. I got a friend who loves co-op games, and he has not gotten a chance to play this with me. At some point, hopefully next year, he'll have more time and we can play this game. If you're watching this, you know who you are. This is the game. Since you're a co-op lover, this is the game for you, my friend. But yeah, this is an amazing game, Unsettled. Awesome, awesome game. And that's why Unsettled is my number 12. My 12th favorite game. Okay, so what's the game that just didn't make it to my top 10? What's that game? What is the game? Well, my number 11 is a game from AEG, in fact, and that is Cubidos. This is a racing game. Another racing game on my list. Wow. So, anyways, this is a racing game, and you're also basically it's not a deck building game, it's not a bag building game, it's a dice building game. That's what it really is. So you start with a very minuscule amount of dice, which doesn't really get you very many feet to, go up the racetrack. So you're going to need to get more dice that provides you more feet to, be the first person to win the race, right? But you also need money as well. So some dice give you more money to purchase more dice. And so there's that too. There's lots of different abilities for each of the dice that you play. Each of the dice have different colors. That's amazing, This is sort of a simultaneous game too, so you're all rolling dice at the same time, provided you, all have enough dice trays, and I think I do now have enough dice trays for everybody. The expansion Foul Play came out this year, I think, and that had added, so you could play 6 players, and I did that. I've done it a few times this year with 6 players, and it is amazing at 6 players. So much fun. That's one of the reasons why this game has jumped up to my 11. This game was like my number 30 or number 40 for a while, favorite game. But man, I've played this game so many times. I think I've played it almost 20 times this year. And since Cubidos doesn't have a app-inspired game on Steam or Board Game Arena for that matter, that means all of those times I played it with my friends and family. It's an amazing game, and that's why Cubidos is my number 11. So that's my 11 through 20 favorite games. So, what games would make it to my top 10? What would be my top 10 favorite games? Well, you'll have to see in the next video, which I will cover on another day. So I'll post this video. You guys can see my 11 through 20 now, and before the end of the year, I plan to do my top 10 favorite board games. Thank you guys for watching my 11 through 20 favorite board games, and I hope to see you guys again next time. Bye.